Okay, so let's pretend I did some tidying up. My studio is an absolute mess as usual. Today we're going to be talking about granulating watercolors. Actually, it's a set I tested a few years back, a set by White Nights. Back then, someone, rightly enough, left a comment that I should not have tested granulating watercolors on hot press paper, which is what I did. So today I'm going to be testing them on cold press paper by Arches and hope that I get a better result. I'm also going to be having a look at some shimmering watercolors by Daniel Smith, which I've had for a while and I never really used them. So I'm going to be using them for the first time today, and I'm quite excited about that because even though you've had that art supply for a while and maybe you've even tested it before, going back to it after a couple of years or whatever is almost like you've got a new art supply. Instead of laying down a smooth, even wash, granulating watercolours have a speckled appearance, as they naturally settle into the tips and fibres of the paper. The reason is very simple. The pigments they are made with have larger, heavier particles, so they physically separate, drifting and settling as the water dries and creating a more textured effect. The smoother the paper, the less noticeable this will be, as the paper will have no tooth to it, i.e. very little texture. So the best paper to use would be rough paper. However, I am mostly a portrait painter and would find it really hard to work on rough paper. So I'm opting for cold pressed, which sits between smooth and rough. Even if you don't own a set of granulating paints, you probably already have some and you might not know. Colours like ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, raw umber, genuine mineral colours, lapis lazuli, hematite, etc., just to mention a few, are all granulating. Most shimmering watercolours, on the other hand, contain shiny minerals that reflect the light. The particles sit on the surface and act like tiny mirrors. Usually the effect is more visible if you paint on black paper, but I never paint on black paper because it just doesn't suit my subject preference and painting style. So I use these more for accents, or I intend to use these more for accents in the piece that I'm about to create. As you can see, I had a bit of trouble identifying the names of these, as I have them on this little swatch card, but the pans all fell out of the box, so they all got mixed up and I had to reassess. Some of the colours look quite similar, like this one down here, these two, and this one up here. It was a bit of it was kind of hard to identify them all, but I think in the end I succeeded. So let's move on and start the painting. Of course, first I have to get the sketch completed. Let's look at these in artificial lighting. It's dark here now, so I don't think it makes much difference when you're looking at granulating paints in artificial light, but it should make a difference when you're looking at shimmer paints in artificial lighting. So let's have a look at them. And I can definitely see that we can see that shimmer much more. You kind of need to tilt it to see it. They are not sparkling by any means, but they are kind of iridescent. I have to say, this is such a beautiful palette of colours that it almost looks like a piece of art, a work of art on its own. Such gorgeous colours. I do feel that I am missing everything that's in the yellow and kind of earthy tones and red range. So I will definitely have to kind of, go in to my own palettes for that. I definitely will need that for the skin. But just look how gorgeous this palette is. I mostly didn't use the granulating watercolors in the skin because I don't think they're suitable, but I reminded myself that to grow we need more challenges, not less. So I challenged myself to use them in the shadows on her face and in the eyes, as well as in the hair, of course. If you'd like to know how I paint the skin, I always mix a blue and a red. Sometimes a cerulean blue and a cadmium red light, or an Indian red and a cerulean blue. It just hits that sweet spot that creates a perfect foundation for most skin tones. Sometimes I add a little raw sienna or yellow ochre to the mix as well, but not always. And in this case today, the skin tone was very cool, so I did not add any form of yellow to my initial wash. And if you'd like to paint along with me, I'll leave the link to my Patreon in the description box below this video, so you can join me in my sketching and painting live sessions together with a great community of international artists. We are always happy to welcome in new people. Also, my patrons are the producers of all my videos, and it's thanks to them that I'm able to keep doing what I love. Now, I don't know whether I can call this a spoiler, but it's kind of one of the key takeaways of this exploration into granulating watercolours, and it's that the more you layer them, the more you lose the granulating effect until it basically becomes invisible, it disappears. You will see this as I move on in the painting. I did see granulation, especially in some of the swatches I did earlier, but I believe that if you want to use these paints to their full potential, you have to paint in thin, watery washes, and you really have to reduce the amount of layering you do. This would work very well in paintings of birds or other animals, and of course in landscapes. To the chin and adding a shadow there. It goes up to kind of halfway to the jaw and then back down. You have a bit of a shadow in the corner of the nostril. Just using what's left on my brush to go into that. And obviously it's always so very important to observe where the shadows are. Of course, there's a shadow in the well of her ear. You don't want to forget about that. And kind of in the under the fold of the ear as well. and kind of on the edge of her lobe. And I hope I don't have to do much more work to the ear because, as I said, I don't really enjoy painting ears in watercolor, but I hate necks even more than ears. Picking up my flat brush by Silver Black Velvet, and I'm going to go in to the hair with some cobalt mist. This will help me understand gauge whether the skin tone is too light, which it probably is. But the intention is to keep the skin tone light because it reflects a character. I don't know if you've guessed who this is. It's the actress whose name, I can't remember the name right now, but she's the actress who played Wednesday Addams in the show that came out on Netflix, I think it was, or Amazon, or one of those, maybe a couple of years ago. It's the day after, and I'm using Arches cold pressed paper, or Arche as some say. So welcome to the ugly phase. I haven't worked on Arches cold pressed paper in quite a long time, though I have to say it's among my favourite cold pressed papers, and I usually find it quite forgiving. I regretted going in with a mix of one of these colours. I'm not sure which one it was. I have lost my swatch card, but basically it was one that tended more towards a brownish hue, like a purplish hue, and I think it's a bit too heavy. But I am confident that I'm confident because I know there is an ugly stage in watercolour. So I wanted to demonstrate right now that this is the ugly stage. So when you encounter the ugly stage in your watercolour painting process, don't fret. Please push through it. I think part of it is also because the eyes are not done, the eyebrows are not in, and we haven't any kind of fine details in the hair. Fingers crossed, I'm going to push through this and I'm going to get out of the ugly stage. Let's see if it works. It must work. It will work. Let's believe in it together. And I believe I did push out of the ugly stage. You almost always do, by the way, so don't let it discourage you. In fact, it was while I was pushing through the ugly stage that I started feeling a deep connection to this piece. And I'm not sure why. I even made a voice note about it. It wasn't about the character. I'm no Wednesday Addams, nowhere near as cool as her. I felt a deep connection to myself, actually, and I think this is what art making is about. It taps into areas of the soul, sometimes out of the blue, and you find yourself almost like you're being embraced and reassured. I really struggled to find words to describe the feeling, but at the end of the day, it's for that feeling that I make art. Also, this was the first standalone piece I did in a while. I have been painting in my sketchbooks a lot recently, so maybe it was the experience of paying tribute to a feeling of holding space for it on its own, giving it value, looking at it, observing it. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just talking mumbo jumbo here. I hope I'm not confusing you. Now back to the paints. I did see some more granulation in the geese, and it's also in the geese that I used the shimmer paints by Daniel Smith. I used the blue, and I also enjoyed using the iridescent copper. Such a lovely colour. These are actually really gorgeous paints, but it's hardly surprising as Daniel Smith never seemed to fail when it comes to creating amazing, very high quality watercolours. Now, I'd like to know, do you use granulating paints? Do you have either of the two sets I showed in this video? I would love to hear your feedback. I really enjoy spending time with you in the comments section, so don't forget to let me know your thoughts below this video. However, this is all from me for today. Thank you for being here, and I will see you all next Sunday. Bye for now.